Well, hello. Welcome back to the Scale My Shopify Store podcast. Kath Langman here with you, your host on the show. And this episode is for all you listeners who feel as though you are working your damn ass off, but getting nowhere fast, like you are so busy all the time that you could not possibly work any harder or longer hours than you already are. Perhaps you're feeling overwhelmed, or perhaps you just feel like, how on earth could you grow your business anymore if you can't work any harder? So, I want to talk about the concept of return on effort, not return on investment, but effort. I mean, it is an investment of your time, I guess. How can you get a little bit more leverage into your days so that the results and outcomes you can produce are bigger and better compared to the efforts or the amount of effort and inputs that you are putting into your business. Obviously, you do the same sorts of calculations with monetary investments, that actual return on financial investment in your business. So, of course, I hope that you are doing that because, we should never be spending money without calculating the returns. But really, your time is the one thing that you spend and you can never get it back. So we need to do the same kind of calculations and measurements in terms of our return on effort. But most often people don't figure out if their efforts are actually generating them a return. And I feel like I see far too many business owners working for peanuts over a very long period of time and they don't even realize it. Now, obviously, in the early stages of your business, time is the one thing that we can put in when we don't have endless buckets of money. And so it's not uncommon to be working super hard in those early days, but we definitely need to make sure that we are always maximizing that return on effort. So today on the show, I'm going to be sharing how you can plan ahead while considering your return on effort as well as your return on investment. And then we're going to discuss how you should measure your actual return on effort to make sure that the actions that you took produced the kind of results that you wanted. And of course, if they don't, then what can you learn from that? And most importantly of all, we will discuss how you can improve your return on effort and get to your goals faster than ever before. Now, to begin with today, I want to share a funny story, and it's the story of Wile E. Coyote and Bugs Bunny. Now, I feel like I'm probably showing my age here a little bit, so for all of you millennials or younger who never watched Looney Tunes as a kid, you've totally missed out, and you should definitely go and look up this classic cartoon series. But Wile E. Coyote and Bugs Bunny were, I don't know, they always cracked me up in the afternoons after school when I was a kid. In the rugged canyons of the American Southwest, a timeless rivalry unfolded between two cunning adversaries, Wile E. Coyote and Bugs Bunny. So Wile E. Coyote was the embodiment of relentless determination. He concocted elaborate schemes to catch his elusive prey, Bugs Bunny, whether it was Acme gadgets or intricate plans. Unfortunately, the coyote's enthusiasm never really paid dividends, but it never waned either. Bugs Bunny, the epitome of wit and agility, always stayed one step ahead. With a twinkle in his eye and a carrot in his hand, he effortlessly outsmarted his pursuer, leaving behind a trail of laughter and bemusement. Their encounters were legendary, each one a testament to the coyote's resilience and the rabbit's quick thinking. One scorching day in the desert, Wile E. Coyote meticulously lays out his latest trap, a labyrinth of pitfalls and snares and contraptions designed to ensnare Bugs Bunny once and for all. Meanwhile, Bugs Bunny sauntered through the arid landscape, humming a tune without a care in the world. He knew Wile E's penchant for grandiose plans and couldn't resist the opportunity for a little bit of mischief. As Bugs Bunny approached the trap, he paused, examining it with a critical eye. With a shrug and a chuckle, he effortlessly danced through the maze, dodging each obstacle with grace and ease. Wile E watched in disbelief as his masterpiece crumbled before his eyes, but undeterred, he leapt into action, chasing Bugs Bunny with newfound determination. The chase led them through desolate canyons, over rocky cliffs, and across sweltering dunes. Dust kicked up behind them as they darted and dodged, each one refusing to concede defeat. In a stroke of misfortune, Wile E. Coyote found himself caught in one of his own traps, a tangled mess of springs and wires. Bugs Bunny, ever the opportunist, seized the moment, offering a friendly wave before disappearing into the horizon. Defeated but undeterred, Wile E. Coyote dusted himself off, his spirit unbroken. For in the heart of every failure lay the spark of determination, fueling his endless pursuit of the one elusive goal, catching the wily Bugs Bunny. And so the timeless rivalry between Wile E. Coyote and Bugs Bunny continued, an eternal dance of wit, resilience, and the thrill of the chase. So, what's the moral of this story as it pertains to business? Wile E. Coyote had a terrible return on effort. He put so much work into all of his plans, expending a lot of effort into the process, and he never got a result. Bugs Bunny, on the other hand, put in hardly any effort at all, and he always got what he wanted. Now, obviously, that's a silly cartoon that bears no resemblance to reality, and the actual effort required to produce a good result in business will be more than just Bugs Bunny skipping through the landscape with a carrot in his hand. So, what do we need to be doing? Now, first of all, what we definitely need to do is to be trying to plan in advance with a little bit of calculation around the return on effort that you might get from your efforts. And I want to share a few methods for approaching this. But to begin with, I just want to give you a shout out. If you haven't already done it, head over to scalemyshopifystore.com and take our time-sucking monster exercise. It's actually really fun, but it's going to be a little bit helpful in just kind of walking you through some ways that you can figure out, what you are spending the most of your time on and whether you are actually, is that a good use of your time and how you might be able to, optimize that return on effort a little bit. So head on over to scalemyshopifystore.com and click on the button there. You'll see at the top of the page to take that free, fun, time-sucking monster exercise. However, planning in advance with some calculations around your return on effort is something that you really want to be doing on a fairly regular basis. So the way that I learned to do this many, many years ago was this. First of all, when you are thinking about your plans and what, obviously you want to have some ideas of the activities that you're going to do to achieve your goals and your vision, whatever that may be. And whether you are writing a formal plan or not, I mean, presumably you're going to have an idea of whether you're going to do some, content for socials or some collaborations or some, working with brand reps or influencers or some traditional advertising or some digital advertising, or you're going to launch a new product, or you need to do a Photoshop shoot. I mean, there's loads of different things that you might be needing to work on from an activity and strategy perspective, at various different stages of your business growth. I mean, also logistics. I was working with one client last week and they have a fairly time-consuming product to fulfill, and they've been working on getting some software and some other machinery in their fulfillment warehouse to be able to work way more efficiently and save a lot of time with fulfilling their orders without having to have too many more people on the staff. So lots of different things that you might need to do. So what I learned that was super helpful was to plan the detailed plans 90 days in advance. I've actually recorded a podcast in the past. I'll fish it out and share the link in the show notes for this episode, really about that 90-day planning cycle. Now, obviously, you want to have some ideas over a longer period of time than 90 days, especially if you are manufacturing your own goods, for example. I mean, most things don't happen that quickly, but the detailed action plan in terms of your marketing and implementing your growth strategies, 90 days is a pretty good time frame to put that detail down, right? And I mean, for starters, it's pretty hard to think further ahead than that. And, with certainty when so many things change so quickly and lots of opportunities and, technology changes happen throughout the year. But also, if you plan the detail too far in advance, there's no impetus, there's no kind of feeling of urgency that motivates your productive action taking. So 90 days is great for lots of reasons, but what you want to do when you are planning that 90-day action plan is really consider how much time you need to implement each activity. I think a lot of us are we find it very easy to overestimate how much we can do in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. And we overload our to-do lists, and then we feel like crap at the end of the day because we haven't even ticked one thing off our list. So we definitely need to put a little bit of thought into how much time each thing should take and will take in reality. And then also consider what is the value of that activity? And you need to think about this in a couple of ways. First of all, in terms of value for money, or this is not even getting to return on effort yet, but what is the value of that, the hourly rate? So in terms of what you would pay somebody else to do that activity for you. But then in conjunction with that, you need to think about what is the potential growth impact. How much more money would you make in your business if you personally spent that time working on that activity versus, could you get a similar return in terms of growth and, revenue growth, profit growth in your business if you paid somebody else to do that activity? Maybe that's their expertise, that's what they're good at. Maybe they're better at it than you. I mean, as business owners, we certainly need to know what our own limitations are and where our zone of genius lies, and try and play to our strengths as much as possible, because you will get a much better return on effort when you do play to your own strengths and interests, in fact. And really work on those two calculations with each activity and task that you are planning out over the next 90 days, right? So then at the end of that 90-day period, and before you plan out the next 90 days, you want to be measuring backwards to see if your estimates were accurate, or how accurate they were, and really learn from that 90-day period. Don't get to that end of the 90 days. I mean, first of all, you should go into each 90-day plan knowing that it's it's a plan, it's a model. It's very rarely going to ever work out 100% as per what your plan is, and the fact that that fact does not mean that you are a failure in business or that you suck at planning or anything like that. The point of the plan and the point of trying to estimate how much you can personally achieve in terms of executing your action plan and implementing your activities, how much you can personally achieve in that time, how much that is worth per hour if you were to pay somebody else to do it, what is the growth impact of that activity. First of all, when you're estimating ahead with that stuff and you're planning ahead, then you can make some decisions about whether that's worth doing. And then when you get to the end of that 90-day period, you have to measure backwards to see if those efforts actually did produce the result and the growth impact that you envisaged, and use those insights as learning tools so that when you plan ahead, you can be a little bit more accurate in estimating what you can achieve with your time, what the growth impact of the strategies might likely be, and so on and so forth. It's like I said, it's a learning tool. It is a method of working and planning and measuring that is going to get you there a whole lot faster than just winging it. I can assure you of that. But it's not something that is supposed to, make you feel terrible about yourself if you don't achieve exactly what was in that plan, exactly as you thought it would happen, right? So at the end of that 90 days, what if your efforts didn't produce a great return? Or they did, but it just took far too long for it to be a feasible approach. I mean, presumably you have some goals around how much income that you want to earn for yourself, and you don't want to dedicate all your time over years and years before you can see some of that cash in your hand. So this is where really measuring the impact of your efforts is super, super important, right? Like there might be some activities that you implement that will eventually pay off, hopefully fairly handsomely, but maybe not so much in the moment. So, you learn over this iterative approach. And, if you can take those learnings and implement the insights into your next 90-day plan, then you will certainly see see the impact on your growth rate speed up and, get yourself a much bigger return on effort in the process. And I don't know if you guys listened to my last podcast of the year last year, which was, I always do an episode about my favorite books that I've read during the year. And one of my most favorite books that I read last year was called The Art of Impossible by Stephen Kotler. And he talks about how the ability to learn faster than your competitors is the only true sustainable competitive advantage that you have. And I mean, most of us, at the end of the day, most of us do need to learn new skills before we can succeed in achieving any goal that we set ourselves, or achieving the level of mastery in our endeavor that would be required to achieve our goals, right? Meaning, for example, most entrepreneurs have a specific idea of what success in business means to them. It's usually a financial or revenue goal, but it might be something else for you. And typically, to achieve something like that, if we've never done it before, we must learn new skills, and then we need to get a whole lot of experience in using those skills before we attain the level of mastery required to achieve the big end goal. And what I want to mention here, that, when we are learning new skills and trying to get experience using those skills and getting better and better at it, we have to take that iterative approach. That 90-day planning and review cycle is critical to learning and getting better faster. Think of it a little bit like teaching your child to swim or to read a book. I think many of you listeners are parents like me. I remember, when I was teaching my kids to read, and, when they were young, and, you really have to break it down into very simple steps and, the foundational steps that they have to grasp first. And, then they practice and practice and practice, and then they master that level of reading. And then you go to the next level where they're learning, more complicated words and more complicated grammar and sentence structures and things like that, right? And eventually, over time, they become proficient readers and hopefully enjoy reading. But when you think about it, that child is going to learn a whole lot faster if they have someone teaching them how to do it, right? Versus the child trying to do it themselves. I think most children are not like Matilda from Roald Dahl's amazing story called Matilda, who did have to teach it to herself because her parents refused. The child needs somebody who already knows how to read to teach them how to do it. And of course, the child will master their new skill a lot faster or slower, depending on how experienced and skilled that teacher is, right? I mean, that certainly goes for swimming. I mean, if somebody is teaching your child to swim and they can hardly swim themselves, then your kid is not going to really learn much from that person, right? And the same goes in business. Firstly, you need to recognize when you need to learn some new skills. Then who do you learn that from? Do you learn it from a few posts in a free Facebook group? Do you learn it from a blog, a course? Do you learn it, from working directly with a teacher or a coach? What kind of teacher would you learn from? Someone with only a little bit of experience or someone with a lot? And so in this regard, I also want to hark back to this book that I loved so much, The Art of Impossible by Stephen Kotler. Highly recommend it. He talks about the ROI on learning as well, so when it comes to trying to learn new skills, you have to learn the skills before you can ever achieve mastery in something. Then the ROI on learning, you know, you're going to find that a few posts in a free Facebook group, there's not a whole lot of experience or research or you know, experience over a long period of time or effort that's, you know, put into writing those free posts. By effort, I mean, you know, trying to, like, the person writing it, the author distilling their, you know, in-depth, extensive experience into a post. You know, a post in a free Facebook group is going to be a flippant thing most times that is just an off-the-cuff thing, versus, say, a blog post. You know, there might be several hours of research and writing put into that. So, you know, you might learn what is, you know, somebody has distilled some weeks or months experience into a blog post, versus working with somebody in a more in-depth manner, so a course, or just working directly with someone one-on-one. You're going to be able to tap into you know, years and years worth of that person's experience. So you really definitely want to think about that ROI on learning as well. You know, if you spend time reading a Facebook post, it's probably going to take you a few minutes. If you spend time reading a blog post, it might take you 15 minutes. And, you know, so you're spending 15 to 30 minutes of your time maybe reading something, and out of that 30 minutes of your time, you're gaining, you know, a few hours worth of that author's experience, versus working one-on-one with somebody. You know, yes, it might take you an hour every week to work with that person, but the, you know, the ROI on that time is massive, because you get to tap into a very extensive number of years of experience from that person who has already achieved mastery. Next, of course, you know, you need to remember that true mastery does take time and experience, and to achieve that, you need to keep practicing and learning and implementing and on and on. And so again, you know, you're always going to get there a lot quicker when you have the right people around you. Another one of my favorite books over the last couple of years was Who Not How by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Ben Harvey. And, you know, they talk about who, not how, because as you grow, I mean, you know, as you grow a business, of course, this works with any other kind of ambition that you have as well. You know, you learn things, you master things, and then you need to hand them off. Really, you need to hand them to the people for whom that activity is a great use of their time, because it is their zone of genius. In Who Not How, they talk about the 20%. But it was the Pareto principle, if I can get my words out, where, you know, 20% of the effort is going to produce 80% of the results. But that's only going to be when you are actually playing to your strengths, right? So over time, over these, you know, iterative 90-day periods of time, planning and reviewing cycles, you know, what can you hand off? You know, what is not a great use of your time, because either, you know, it's something that's going to cost you not very much to pay somebody else to do, or you know, the growth impact of that activity being done is, you know, really worthwhile. So the activity needs to be done for whatever reason, and, you know, you're going to get a good outcome of it, but maybe it's not your zone of genius. And, you know, if you were to spend your time working on something else, you might have a much bigger impact on the growth of your business. So, for example, in my business, my zone of genius is working on growth strategies, and I am, you know, I can very quickly get at the what is the core problem in this moment, and what do we need to implement in order to bust past that bottleneck and grow further. But, you know, for me, spending time like in the back end of Shopify building websites, or spending time, you know, doing you know, posting content on social media, those things are not a great use of my time. It's not my zone of genius, and it's going to take my time away from the activities that can actually produce the biggest impact on growth. And you know, in your business, it might be that you really love product design and development, or you really love coming up with really fun promotions and, you know, strategies that are going to really get your business known and get a lot of people onto your website and shopping from you in whatever way, right? So you need to figure out what is that zone of genius for you, and over time you need to be gradually offloading the other things to the people for whom that is their 20%, the 20% of what they do that produces the 80% result. So this is how you get to your goals a lot faster when you have the right people around you. So I wanted to just throw out, for those of you who go through the time-sucking monster exercise, maybe you go through the 90-day planning process and realize that there are certain things that you're spending a lot of time doing in your business. For example, spending a lot of time creating content for social media. You might be spending a lot of time, creating Canva graphics for your email campaigns, and then it takes a long time to build those email campaigns. I mean, if you're spending hours a week in Canva and you're not a designer, you're not a graphic designer for whom, that kind of task is your zone of genius, you need to find a way to hand that off, because that time that you're spending, it's not going to cost you very much to pay somebody else to do that, right? Definitely that work needs to get done, but you are, the opportunity cost of you spending all of that time every week in Canva producing graphics for social media and for your email campaigns and just doing that nuts and bolts marketing stuff is taking you away from working on strategies that will actually speed up and accelerate the growth of your business much more quickly. For example, finding ways to get, really get brand visibility, whether it's PR or, collaborating with other businesses and brands that share the same audience as you. I mean, if you haven't listened to last week's interview episode with Raf from Backslap, go and listen to that, because he is a genius at really getting, a lot of leverage out of his time and effort, with the strategies that he spends time on. If you are, other ways that you could spend your time and get a bigger impact on your growth rate would be potentially learning and mastering, maybe running ads on a new platform, or working on a new product that is going to maybe even double your revenue, because your customers will come back and buy two things instead of one thing from you. Or maybe you're working, you could spend that time working on a really big promotion that's going to drive a lot more traffic and sales, or who knows what, there's so many things that would be a whole lot better use of your time than spending many hours a week in Canva if you're not a graphic designer. So, like I said, it's the who, not how, and having the right people around you and the right iterative planning and review cycle, where you are literally estimating how much time things will take, estimating the potential impact and growth from that time, and then working out what you should hand off and what you should retain based on that return on effort, and you're going to get there a whole lot faster. So for those of you who are spending far too much time on the nuts and bolts marketing stuff, like Canva and email campaigns and all of that kind of stuff, you might want to consider getting a VA, because this is certainly a way to buy some time that is low cost, essentially. And if you pick the right kind of VA for whom that kind of work is what they're trained for and what they're really, really good at, so they're probably going to do it a lot more quickly than you and do it to a higher standard than you as well. And therefore, the return on their effort is going to be much greater than if you did that work, right? So if you're looking for a e-commerce trained VA, e-commerce marketing VA, who is really already trained to use those platforms and tools that an e-commerce business needs for their marketing, you might want to consider one of our VAs. So we've been training them in our digital marketing agency, and so they have been spending a lot of time really learning those skills and mastering them to a high standard. And you can certainly check that out by heading to scalemyshopifystore.com. You'll see it in the top menu, hire a VA, and you can just book a free call if you want to have a chat about that. You can certainly get started with a few hours a week. You don't have to go straight in with a full-time VA, which might be too much depending on what stage of business growth that you're at. And for those of you who are a little bit further along, but you still need that kind of a help around, you can get more than just a handful of hours. So it can be tailored to what you need. So go and check it out, scalemyshopifystore.com. Do that time-sucking monster exercise and go and check out the VA offering, and adopt this 90-day planning and review cycle where you are really looking at how much time it took you to do things, what was the impact of you spending your time on those activities, and then how can you learn from that experience and get better at estimating and planning and executing on things on every 90 days. And building in that review of your the return on your efforts as well as investments from whatever you're spending. All right, guys, that's what I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed that and a little bit of fun with our Looney Tunes story today. And I look forward to being back on the show with you again next week. Bye for now.